Okay, hello Alec. Thank you for joining us. Could you tell me what you consider the main trends in data modeling that are affecting you?
Thanks, Werner. That's a good question to open. I'm glad you specified the trends affecting me. There's many trends in data modeling. The obvious ones, what does big data mean for data modeling, or not only SQL mean for data modeling? What's affecting me, though, is the resurgence of interest in data modeling in certain communities, or the adoption of data modeling by communities that you might not expect, that previously wouldn't have been very interested. And there's three that come to mind. That's the Agile community, the community of business analysts, and the business intelligence community. Now, if we just consider the Agile community, historically that would be a group that would not be too keen on modeling. They would say, oh no, that's paralysis by analysis. And that may be true on a smaller setting, but Agile has scaled up and is now being applied on enterprise scale initiatives. And what we're finding is that without an initial data model to get everyone speaking the same language, you can end up refactoring, or as I like to call it, rehactoring forever. So you might find Agile groups calling it domain modeling or fact modeling or concept modeling or something else, but still, when you look closely, what has happened is they're adopting data modeling, and quite enthusiastically, for a variety of reasons. Business analysts who have traditionally perhaps been taught that their job is to develop a list of requirements and leave the data modeling to a data professional are finding that in fact it's a great tool, again, for building a common language for an initiative, and it's a great platform on which to develop requirements. And once you have identified the main entities in a conceptual model, that's a great leaping off place to what are the user stories that relate to this entity and other applications. And finally, we have the business intelligence community, which certainly is your prime audience and has certainly historically done a lot of modeling, but perhaps more dimensional modeling, star schema modeling, bitemporal modeling, or any of the BI-focused modeling disciplines. But I'm starting to find that in some of my workshops, for instance, the ones we taught this week here in Hilversum, 90% of the attendees were business intelligence professionals who were finding that they really needed some techniques to get a better handle on the operational business view of the world, and also to be able to use data modeling to depict the capabilities of the existing systems and maybe understand some of the integration challenges. So that's really affecting me, and I have to say in a positive way, because it's driving a much wider group of attendees to our data modeling workshops.
Okay. Would you consider data modeling still to be a profession?
Yes, I would. I would consider data modeling to be a profession. It must be, because I know many people who are professional data modelers. They may be employed within a large organization, or they may be independent contractors, but there are a lot of people who this is their primary skill. Now, I did a keynote recently at the Enterprise Data and Business Intelligence Conference in London, and my keynote was about the multi-skilled influencer, and how if you're a professional data modeler, you also need to branch out and have at least passing skills in some other areas. But if your core is data modeling, you can still make a profession out of that, which is good news for many of your viewers.
Okay. And now about big data and non-relational. Have you done any data modeling projects with big data and or non-relational stuff?
Yes, I have. Now, I have to be, full disclosure, honesty, that is not my specialty. But in a situation that has come about a number of times is I'll be brought in to an organization as a consultant, largely for the work that I do in the business process space. And then what often happens is I discover, boy, these people really need a data model because they're not all talking the same language. And sometimes that happens when the project is what we would call big data. So for instance, recently a very large media organization that was changing their business model had me come in to look at their processes, and they were talking about, this is big data, this is clickstream, this is digital media, mountains of data, and everybody was talking about products and customers and consumption and behavior and segmentation and behavior-based segmentation and so on. And I realized fairly soon they either didn't actually know what they were talking about, or they had very different ideas about what these terms meant. So I ended up doing data modeling of what was effectively big data from a business perspective, and they found it extremely helpful.
You teach a number of courses. Can you tell us a bit about the business-oriented approach to data modeling course?
Yeah, that's one that has really seen a resurgence, our business-oriented data modeling. And that's because I've positioned it certainly to satisfy people who are going to intend to become a professional data modeler, or a data professional like a DBA or an ETL developer who wants to get some skills in this area. But increasingly, that course is attracting agile practitioners, business analysts, BI people, because as the name implies, we show how to approach this from a business perspective. How do I get a room full of business people to engage productively in developing a data model without them knowing it? How can I gently bring people into data modeling without having to teach them data modeling? And then how can I use that data model to start doing things like discovering requirements? What services and user stories can we identify simply by working with the data model? So it's really about a phased approach to data modeling that is, as I like to say, doable within your natural lifetime and meaningful to mere mortals.
Okay, and what do you consider the target audience for this course?
It is data professionals, business analysts, anybody who wants to know about this. It's primarily for business analysts and database people becoming data modelers, but it's certainly attracting a wider audience than just that.
Okay, excellent. Well, having mastered entity relationship modeling after doing this course, what are the main topics then that you cover in the advanced data modeling course?
Well, the advanced class actually builds on what we learn in the introductory or business-oriented class, but it starts dealing, first of all, with much more complex situations, more complex business rules on multi-way associations. That's something that gets very complex. We look a lot more at generalization, subtyping, clever uses of recursion. So more complex structures is one thing. Another thing we teach, though, is the human side of this. So we emphasize the value of consistency, and I show people many ways in which, if we are more consistent in how we approach this and how we develop our models, our business partners will embrace it much more readily. And that leads into the third major topic, which is communication. How can I communicate a model to an audience after it's been developed? How can I better communicate while I'm developing it? So on one hand, it's about the complexity that can arise in data models, but it's also about the human element, making it better, easier, and more effective for people to engage in.
Yes, okay. Well, that gives me a good idea. Thank you very much for this short take, and looking forward to the next edition.
Well, thanks a lot, Werner. It really made me think a little bit about my first love, which is data modeling.